My name is Mara Ellis, and I'm 32 years old. I used to think love was supposed to feel safe, predictable, like a quiet apartment on a rainy night, the hum of the fridge, the soft clinking of dishes after dinner, small sounds that meant we're okay. But safety, I learned, is what kills desire. At least that's what Timothy said before he left me. He was standing by the kitchen counter that night, hands shoved in his pockets, his voice steady in a way that made my stomach twist. "You're perfect, Mara, that's the problem." The spatula in my hand trembled. I thought he was joking, the kind of cruel humor he used when he wanted to sound profound, but his eyes didn't even flinch. "You don't get it," he continued, his tone so calm it frightened me. "I can't breathe here. Everything's too still. I need to feel something again." "Timothy," I said softly, my throat tightening. "What are you talking about?" He smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they've already left you days ago, and this conversation is just formality. "Her name's Lena," he said. "She makes me feel alive. She gets me." I could feel every word puncturing the air between us, tiny invisible holes, sucking the oxygen out of the room. I didn't scream, didn't beg. I just stood there, heart pounding so hard it hurt. "You're serious," I whispered. "I am." That was it. No long explanations, no apologies, just a final shrug and the sound of his shoes on the wooden floor as he walked to the door. He didn't even look back. The door closed with a soft click, and somehow that sound was louder than any argument we'd ever had. People think heartbreak starts at the moment someone leaves you. It doesn't. It starts in the quiet, the way silence grows like mold. I replayed everything in my head. Our lazy Sundays with coffee and half-finished sketches scattered across the table, the way he'd call me his anchor whenever his anxiety hit before a show. I'd sit with him on the bathroom floor holding his shaking hands while he whispered he couldn't do it. I'd say, "You can. You always can." He'd look at me with tears in his eyes, whisper, "What would I do without you?" Apparently the answer was Lena. Timothy was a digital artist, brilliant in a scattered, self-absorbed kind of way. I was the steady one, freelance graphic designer. The bills got paid because I made sure they did. Our apartment was small, but warm, a space that smelled like coffee and paint. He used to call it our creative cave. Now it was just a hollow room with ghost outlines on the walls where his canvases had been. I sat down on the couch, still holding the spatula. The absurdity of it hit me. I'd been cooking dinner when my life fell apart. Stir-fry and heartbreak. The air felt heavy, humid, like grief was a physical thing pressing on my chest. I stared at the empty space by the door where his shoes used to be. "He didn't even look back," I said out loud, as if hearing it might make it more believable. That night I couldn't sleep. Every corner of the apartment was a memory. The dent in the pillow beside me, the coffee stain on the desk where he used to sit editing his digital prints. Even the buzzing light above the kitchen sink seemed to mock me, flickering, persistent, irritatingly alive. My phone lit up once. A message from Bella. "Hey girl, just checking in. You okay?" I didn't answer. I didn't want to explain that I didn't even know what okay meant anymore. At around 2 a.m., I finally stood up, walked to the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked fine. Too fine. My eyes were dry, my face calm. That's when it hit me, the hurt hadn't started yet. The real pain was patient. It was waiting. 2 weeks later, the apartment was half empty. Timothy had sent a short text. "I'll come get the rest of my stuff next weekend." No apology, just logistics. I didn't reply. I packed what was left of him, sketchbooks, old brushes, a mug with his initials, into a box and left it by the door. When I got home that evening, the box was gone. No note, not even a thank you. There's a particular kind of silence that follows abandonment. It's not loud. It's not even sad. It's sterile. Like a clean wound, no blood, just emptiness. I started filling it with noise podcasts, playlists, the hum of my computer while I worked. Anything but silence. Sometimes I'd imagine what Timothy was doing, traveling with Lena, taking photos in some sun-drenched city, pretending to be free. I'd imagine her laughing too loud, her lipstick too bright, her world moving too fast. And then I'd stop myself, because every time I thought of them, I felt smaller. A few nights later, I found myself sitting on the kitchen floor, the same place where I once held Timothy during his panic attack. The tiles were cold beneath my legs. I remembered how he'd shaken in my arms, whispering, "Don't let me fall apart," and I had promised I won't. The irony burned through me. He was the one who left, and I was the one holding pieces of a life that no longer existed. That night, I made a quiet vow to myself. No revenge, no wallowing, just absence. If he could erase me so easily, I could disappear just as cleanly. I packed a single suitcase laptop essentials sketchpad and moved into a small studio apartment across town. The new place had no memories, no ghosts, just white walls and silence that belonged to me. The first morning there, sunlight streamed through the window, warm and unfamiliar. I opened my sketchbook and wrote one word at the top of the page: rebuild. I didn't know what that meant yet, but for the first time in weeks, it felt like something I could own. That was the day I stopped waiting for him to apologize, the day I stopped being his anchor, and maybe the day I finally became my own. It's strange how life can go quiet without dying. I didn't cry after Timothy left, not once. I thought that made me strong. But silence isn't strength. It's just grief that learned how to hide. My new apartment was a small studio tucked above a noisy noodle shop. The scent of broth and frying garlic lingered through the walls. Every morning, I'd wake up to the clatter of dishes downstairs, pretending that sound belonged to a new beginning. I'd work all day freelance graphic design jobs, logo commissions, product packaging, anything that filled the hours and kept my mind from drifting toward him. I told myself I was fine. I told everyone I was fine. But the truth was, I had vanished. I deleted my social media, stopped answering calls. Even Bella, my closest friend, had to drive across town and knock on my door to make sure I was still alive. She arrived one evening holding 2 cups of bubble tea and a plastic bag of groceries. "You know ghosts are quieter than you've been lately," she said, half smiling as she dropped the bag on the counter. I forced a laugh. "I'm just working a lot." Bella studied me, her eyes soft but searching. "You're working a lot because you don't want to think." I opened my mouth to argue but stopped. She was right. I had become a shadow wearing my own name. Sometimes, when the loneliness was too heavy, I'd go running. The kind of run that doesn't feel athletic, it feels desperate. Feet pounding against pavement, lungs burning, heart racing, just to prove it still could. During one of those runs, I passed by a street mural. It was a massive painting of a woman standing in a storm, her hair whipping wildly, her face turned upward. Someone had written beneath it, "Even the wind respects those who refuse to bow." I stopped running. I stared at the words until my breathing steadied. Something inside me cracked, not from sadness, but realization. I'd spent years bending myself to keep Timothy calm, supported, inspired. Maybe it was time to stop bowing. At night, though, my brain betrayed me. I'd close my eyes and replay our last weeks together, the way his messages became shorter, how he started staying out late, his sudden obsession with projects I was never part of. The moment that should have warned me came back sharp and clear. One night he came home smelling like a different perfume, floral expensive, not mine. I asked where he'd been. He grinned and said, "Lena's helping me with a concept video. You'll see it soon." I didn't push, I trusted him. And that was the night I lost him quietly, unknowingly. I didn't lose him in one night, I whispered into the dark. I lost him one unread message at a time. Nathan, Bella's husband, called me a few days later. His voice was cautious. "Hey, Mara, I know you don't want to talk about him, but Timothy's name popped up online." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "Bella's gonna kill me for telling you this, but he's in a video with that Lena girl." I laughed bitterly. "Of course he is." "Promise me you won't look it up," Nathan said quickly. "Bella will explain later. Just don't. But you can't tell a person not to look at a wound and expect them to listen." That night I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, heart hammering. My thumb hovered over the search bar. I didn't type his name. I couldn't. Instead I typed hers, Lena Vale. A flood of perfectly curated images filled the screen. Sun-drenched beaches, rooftop dinners, travel reels. And there he was, Timothy, smiling wider than I'd ever seen, holding her hand, posing for pictures that screamed new beginnings. But then I saw the captions. My muse, "When love feels like freedom." The irony was acid in my throat. He once told me I was the reason he could create. Now he was crediting someone else for his rebirth. I threw my phone across the bed, heart thudding. The glow from the screen cast long shadows on the wall like ghosts dancing silently. The next morning I got a text from Bella. "Don't look her up, please. I saw something you shouldn't see." But it was too late. I called her immediately. "Bella, what's going on?" She hesitated. Her voice was lower than usual, careful. "Okay, I'll just tell you. But you have to promise you won't go searching for it yourself. Just tell me." "Lena posted a prank video," Bella said. She humiliated him, Mara. Publicly." My pulse stopped for a second. "What do you mean?" "You'll see it eventually. But just let me come over. It's better if I explain in person." That evening, Bella showed up at my apartment. She didn't bring bubble tea this time, just her phone, and a look that said she wished she didn't have to do this. She sat beside me on the couch, opened the app, and said softly, "He's in this one." She hit play. The video began with Lena laughing into the camera. "You guys are not ready for this prank," she said, the screen shaking slightly as she filmed. Timothy appeared behind her looking tired. Then came the setup. She told him she was going back to her ex, recording his reaction. When he realized it wasn't a joke, when he started crying, really crying, she didn't stop filming. She zoomed in. She laughed. And the internet laughed with her. Bella paused the video halfway through, her voice breaking. "It gets worse, but I couldn't even finish it." I sat frozen, not out of sympathy, not satisfaction, just shock. Timothy, the man who told me I was too safe, who chased chaos because it felt like freedom, was now trapped in the exact circus he left me for. Bella whispered. Mara, he looked destroyed. I swallowed hard, staring at the frozen frame on her screen, his face, mid-breakdown eyes, red mouth open in silent humiliation. A part of me wanted to delete the image from existence. Another part wanted to memorize it. Not because I wanted him to suffer, but because it was proof that I didn't deserve what he did. When Bella left, I sat in the dim glow of my desk lamp, staring at my reflection in the window. The city lights outside blurred into streaks of gold. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Not joy, not revenge, just release. He had traded comfort for chaos, and the world had finally shown him the cost. I whispered into the empty room. "You always wanted an audience, Timothy. Now you have one." My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. No message preview. I didn't need to open it to know who it was. The first text came at midnight. Unknown number. "Mara, please, I need to talk to you." I stared at it for a long minute before pressing the power button and watching the screen go dark. It was the easiest decision I'd made all week. By morning, there were 6 more. By evening, there were 14. I didn't open any of them. A few days passed before Bella called again, her voice a mix of disgust and pity. "Mara, it's worse than I thought. The video blew up millions of views. People are calling it the most heartbreaking prank of the year." I stayed quiet. "Do you want to hear what happened next?" I didn't, but I said yes anyway. According to Bella, after Lena's prank went viral, the comments turned vicious. At first, people laughed. Then they turned on both of them. They called Lena a manipulative narcissist. They called Timothy weak, pathetic, a crying clown. Someone even stitched the video with a cruel caption. "The artist who left his muse now becomes the art." Every platform had a version. TikTok, Reddit, Twitter, even gossip blogs. Timothy was trending not as the next big digital artist, but as a meme. Bella's voice trembled when she said it. They filmed him breaking, and everyone watched. I didn't know what to feel. The part of me that had been humiliated, discarded, wanted to call it poetic justice. But when I closed my eyes, I saw him crying. Not the man who left me, but the boy I once held on a bathroom floor, whispering him through his panic. I sat down by the window, the city glowing beneath me, and whispered to myself, "This isn't satisfaction, it's just symmetry." The universe wasn't cruel, it was just balanced. A few nights later, Nathan sent me a link. I shouldn't have clicked it, but curiosity has its own gravity. The video opened with Lena in tears, not genuine ones. "I just wanted to make funny content," she sniffled into the camera. I didn't think he'd take it that seriously. Her apology was empty, performative. She even smiled at the end, as if tragedy was a brand she could repackage. Then, mid-scroll, a second video surfaced. Someone had secretly recorded Timothy days later, sitting alone at a cafe, head down, hoodie pulled tight. The caption read, "Fallen artist, broken man." I didn't finish watching. I closed the app, deleted the link, and stared at my reflection on the dark screen. There's a kind of sorrow that doesn't hurt, it just exhausts you. For days, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again and again. Each new vibration felt like a knock on a door I refused to open. Then one evening, the buzzing stopped. Silence. I thought it was over until the emails began. From Timothy R. Subject: "Please just read this one." I didn't. From Timothy R. Subject: "I'm sorry. I didn't know how to come back from it." I hovered over delete for a while, then clicked it without opening. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give anymore. What he wanted was not closure, it was an audience. And I was done performing. Bella came over that weekend with takeout and a bottle of wine. We ate in silence for a while, the movie playing in the background, forgotten. "You're really not going to answer him?" she asked finally. I shook my head. What could he possibly say? Maybe he wants to apologize. I laughed softly. Apologies don't rebuild what people burn willingly. Bella nodded, exhaling through her nose. "You're stronger than I thought." "No," I said, "just finished." Later that night after she left, I sat by my desk and opened my sketchbook. The page was blank, the pencil trembling slightly in my hand. I started drawing, not him, not her, but a window. Cracked glass streaks of light cutting through the darkness. Halfway through, I realized what it meant. Timothy had shattered something in me, yes, but cracks let light in. At around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed one last time. Not a number this time, a contact name I had once sworn I'd never delete. Timothy. I should have blocked him long ago, but part of me wanted to know what he'd write when there was nothing left to salvage. Mara, I ruined everything. You were the only one who ever saw me. I'm sorry. That was all. No excuses, no deflection, just regret. And for the first time, I believed him. But I still didn't reply. I placed the phone face down, turned off the lamp, and let the dark fill the room. The silence didn't hurt anymore. It felt earned. A few days later, Bella sent one final text. He deleted his account. Every video, every photo with her. It's like he never existed. I typed back. Good. Maybe he's finally learning how to be alone. I paused, then added, like I did. And as I hit send, I realized this was what peace actually felt like. Not the absence of pain, but the absence of noise. Grief doesn't end when someone says sorry. It ends when you stop needing them to. By the time Timothy's silence stretched into weeks, I had started to forget what his voice even sounded like. It's strange how something that once felt permanent can fade into background static like a song you used to love until you realize the lyrics were never really about you. Then one morning my phone buzzed again. A message. Then another. Then 3 more. Mara, I know I don't deserve it, but please. Just one conversation. I'm lost. Everything's gone. You were the only real thing in my life. I stared at the screen, watching the dots flicker as he kept typing. My breakfast went cold. He kept sending long paragraphs, apologies, tangled in self-pity, guilt, dressed up as poetry. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish him, but because the girl who would have answered those texts, she didn't exist anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked to the window, watching the city from my 5th-floor apartment. The streetlights shimmered against the rain, and for a second, the reflection on the glass looked like him, faint, familiar, fading. I thought about all the times I had forgiven him before he even asked. The little betrayals that never had names, the ignored messages, the late returns, the nights I stayed up worrying, while he claimed to be working on his art. Every one of those moments was practice for this silence. And now silence was all I had left to give. The next morning I went for a walk. No destination, just motion. There was a small park near the river where we used to sit and sketch together, back when love was still an idea we hadn't exhausted yet. I found the same bench. The initials we carved into the wood were still there, J plus M. The letters looked childish now, naive. I ran my fingers over them, feeling no spark, no ache, just a faint memory of who I'd been. A notification broke the quiet, another message. I saw your old post today, the one with the coffee cups. God, I missed that morning. I wish I could go back. I locked my phone without reading the rest. That was the difference between who I was and who I'd become. The old Mara would have answered. The new Mara simply walked away. A week later, Bella texted me a screenshot. Timothy had started posting again, but not the same kind of content. Now it was vague black and white photos of rain hands, cigarette smoke. Captions like, "Everyone leaves. Healing is lonely." The comments were full of strangers telling him to stay strong. Some defended him, some mocked him. But I didn't feel anything, not even satisfaction. It wasn't my job to witness his redemption arc. That same evening, Bella called. "You're still not replying to him, right?" I smiled faintly. "No, I think he's talking to the ghost version of me, the one he left behind." "Good," she said. "Let her rest." We talked for a while about work, about life. For the first time, the conversation didn't orbit around him. It felt light, normal. Before hanging up, Bella added softly, "You know, it's strange. He keeps trying to reach the old you, but he doesn't realize you buried her and built someone stronger in her place." I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me long after we hung up. 2 nights later, another message arrived. "I saw you today, I think. Were you at the bookstore on 5th? You looked beautiful." I hadn't been anywhere near 5th Street, but the thought of him still looking for me, seeing me in strangers, made my stomach twist. This was what regret looked like when it came too late, desperate, delusional, like trying to hold smoke. "You said I'd regret it someday. You were right." I deleted the message. Then without hesitation, I blocked his number. I went to bed early that night, expecting the usual restless sleep. But instead, I dreamed not of him, but of me. In the dream, I was standing in the middle of a crowded street, everyone rushing past, faceless and loud. Timothy was there too, calling my name from across the road. But when I turned, my voice didn't come out, because I didn't need it to. I just smiled, stepped into the crowd, and kept walking until his voice disappeared completely. When I woke, I felt lighter, as if I'd finally exhaled something I'd been holding for months. That morning, while making coffee, I noticed the steam rising from the cup, soft, swirling, temporary, and I realized that's all he ever was. Something warm for a moment, then gone. I opened my sketchbook again and turned to a blank page. This time, instead of a window or a storm, I drew a single figure walking forward, leaving footprints that faded behind her. I titled it Release. Around noon, Bella texted again. He deleted everything. The videos, the posts, even his email account. I wrote back, "Good." Then I added almost as an afterthought, "Maybe now he'll finally learn how to live with silence." She sent a heart emoji, and that was that. That night, I made myself a promise: no more looking back, no more ghost versions of me lingering in his memory. If he ever reached out again, he'd be talking to someone who no longer lived here. Because the truth was simple, quiet, and final. I wasn't his lesson anymore. I was my own recovery. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of gray, quiet afternoon when the city feels half asleep. I had just come back from a client meeting, umbrella dripping on the floor, when I saw him. Timothy. He was sitting on the front steps of my building, hunched forward like a statue left out in the rain. His hair was longer, messier. The confident smirk he once wore like armor was gone. In its place, something sunken. My heartbeat didn't spike. My breath didn't quicken. I just stopped walking. He looked up as if he had felt me before he saw me. "Mara." My name left his lips like a confession. I stayed at the bottom of the steps, keeping the railing between us. "What are you doing here?" I didn't know where else to go." His voice cracked. "Please, just 5 minutes." Rain drizzled down between us. The street hummed with distant traffic, a quiet soundtrack to a conversation I never thought I'd have. Up close, he looked fragile, dark circles, cracked lips, the faint tremor of someone running on guilt and caffeine. He clutched a notebook in his hand, edges soggy. I recognized it. The same sketchbook he once guarded like a secret. "I've been thinking about everything he said. About us." "Us," I repeated softly. "There hasn't been an us in a long time." He swallowed hard. "I made a mistake, Mara. The biggest one of my life." I crossed my arms steady. Which part? Leaving me, or turning someone else's pain into performance art? His shoulders sank. He didn't argue. "Lena. She was poison. She used me, filmed me, at my worst, told me it was for content. I thought I could handle it, but I didn't even recognize myself anymore." "You thought she was freedom," I said quietly. He nodded, eyes glistening. "And you were peace. I didn't know the difference until I lost both." A long silence stretched between us. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated something, but all I felt was a strange, calm pity. He rubbed his face, voice breaking. "You were the only one who ever saw me. I didn't know how to love something that didn't hurt." That line landed heavy. For years I'd tried to make his storms gentle, tried to be his shelter, but he'd mistaken calm for emptiness. I looked at him, the rain collecting in his hair, and said, "You know what's funny, Timothy? I used to think love was about saving someone, but now I realize it's about not losing yourself in the process." He stared at me, lost, searching for the woman who used to pull him back together, but she was gone. He stepped closer, voice trembling. "Can we just talk? Maybe have coffee? I need you, Mara. Please." I took a step back. The space between us was small, but it felt like an entire life. "I don't think you understand," I said evenly. "You don't need me. You need to face what you've done and who you've become. I can't fix that for you." "But you were always the one who made me better," he whispered. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I was the one who made you comfortable. That's not the same thing." He looked like he might cry. The sight should have hurt, but it didn't. He had drained every ounce of my sympathy long before this moment. "Mara, I still love you," he said suddenly. "I always did. Stop," I cut in softly. "Don't rewrite history to make it easier to live with. You didn't love me, Timothy. You loved the version of yourself that I made bearable." He froze. For the first time, there was no defense, no dramatic apology, just silence. I nodded toward the sidewalk. "You should go. It's cold." "Please," he said again, voice cracking. "I have nowhere else." "Then maybe that's where you'll finally start over." He exhaled a shaky, defeated sound. Then he did something that surprised me. He smiled. Not the smug one. A small, tired smile that almost looked human again. "You really are different," he said quietly. "I had to be." He looked down at his notebook, then back at me. "I drew something. For you." He opened it just enough for me to glimpse the first page, an unfinished portrait. Me, sitting by the window, sketchbook in hand. But my face was blank. just light outlines, no features. I could never finish it, he said. I didn't know what peace looked like. The wind caught his voice carrying it off before I could respond. I turned toward the door, key in hand. Goodbye, Timothy, I said softly. And this time I mean it. He didn't follow. He didn't call out. Just sat there watching me go as the rain fell harder. Inside, I leaned against the door, breathing slow. The sound of the rain was steady, almost rhythmic, like the universe tapping softly, reminding me it was over. I thought of him out there, soaked and small, waiting for a version of me that no longer existed. And for the first time since he left, I felt something pure and uncomplicated. Relief. I made tea, warm, quiet. The mug was chipped, the light dim, but it felt like home. Outside, thunder rolled far away. Inside, peace settled like dust after a long storm. He wanted closure, maybe redemption. But I realized something simple, almost beautiful, I didn't need either. Because what I had now wasn't revenge or justice, it was peace. And peace, unlike love, doesn't beg to be understood. When I woke the next morning, the rain had stopped. The streets below my window glistened with leftover puddles, and the city smelled clean again, like something had been washed away overnight. I made coffee slowly, the way I used to before everything fell apart. The ritual felt different now, not lonely, just mine. Each movement, deliberate grind, pour, stir, breathe. It was ordinary, and that was its power. Timothy hadn't come back to the steps. He hadn't texted, called, or emailed. And I knew in a way that didn't even need words, that this time he was really gone. The silence he left behind wasn't heavy anymore. It was space. I spent the day working at my desk, the kind of focused, steady rhythm that made time slip quietly by. At one point, I looked up and caught my reflection in the window, soft morning light across my face, a faint smile I didn't recognize at first. It wasn't joy, it wasn't victory, it was peace. Around noon, I found myself cleaning out an old drawer. Receipts, movie tickets, tiny pieces of a life that had once felt permanent. Buried at the bottom was one of Timothy's sketches, a rough portrait of me from years ago, laughing mid-sentence. He'd drawn it during one of those quiet Sunday mornings when we used to sit by the window drinking cheap instant coffee. The drawing was incomplete, just like the one he'd shown me on the steps, my hair half done, my hands unfinished. For a long time, I just stared at it, not with pain, not even nostalgia, just quiet acknowledgement. Then carefully I folded it once and placed it in the trash. I didn't need to hold on to fragments anymore. That evening, Bella called. Did he show up again? No, I said, and I hope he never does. You sound different. I smiled. I am. She exhaled on the other end, relief, softening her tone. I'm proud of you, Mara. Thanks, I said. For what? For walking away without needing to watch him fall. That made me pause. Because she was right, months ago, I would have wanted proof that he suffered. Now I didn't care. Pain isn't always justice. Sometimes peace is the only revenge worth keeping. After we hung up, I turned off the lights and opened my sketchbook. The last page was still blank, the one I'd titled Release. I drew slowly line by line until a figure emerged. A woman standing on a shoreline, waves around her feet, wind pushing through her hair. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She wasn't leaving either. She was simply there, alive, steady, unafraid. At the bottom, I wrote a single word, closure. And for the first time, I meant it. Later that night, I sat by the window again, the city glowing in the distance. My phone buzzed once on the table. I didn't move. I didn't need to check who it was. Maybe it was a client. Maybe it was Timothy one last time. Either way, it didn't matter. I reached over, turned the phone face down, and let the silence settle back around me. The world outside kept moving, sirens, laughter, wind, but inside my apartment, everything was calm. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the counter, the same way I had on the night he left. Only now the air didn't feel suffocating. That night, I had been frozen in place, watching my life collapse like a bridge with no warning. Tonight I was standing on the other side of it, steady, rebuilt, whole. People always talk about heartbreak like it's a war you survive, but it isn't. It's a slow return to yourself. You start by gathering the pieces you didn't know you lost: your solitude, your laughter, your quiet mornings. Then one day you look around and realize you've built a life no one can take credit for but you. That's what freedom really is. Not running away from pain, but outgrowing it. I looked out at the skyline, the city lights stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, Timothy was probably trying to start over. Maybe he'd learn something this time. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, his story no longer had anything to do with mine. I took a long sip of water, letting the coolness settle in my chest. In the reflection of the window, I saw myself not the version he remembered, but the one I had become. Still, strong, unapologetically alive. I whispered to the empty room. You traded love for spectacle. I traded pain for peace. Then I smiled small, sure, and entirely my own. And that was enough.